Welcome to another episode of Just Joshing. Now this is my first time having a non-journalist on the show. This is one of my favorite people on Wizards Twitter. Will, can you please say what's up to the people?
What's up, everybody? Honored to be the first non-journo guest on Just Chill. So yeah, no, it's sweet.
If you follow the Wizards, you'll probably see Will's kind of musings on the timeline just about everything Wizards in general. I wanted to kind of get the fan perspective, just because I don't know. I think I'm just kind of curious with how the fan base is sort of viewing things right now, right? I mean, they just lost to the Lakers by quite a lot last night, recording this on Saturday. Uh, you know, Moments like those, I wonder, like, do the fans stay enthusiastic? Obviously, this season's not about winning, but
Right.
Luca and LeBron pretty much, made a mockery of the squad. That if we're being honest. So, how do you
Yeah.
feel overall?
I mean, overall, I feel really good with where we're at, like in Wizards fandom and the direction everything's going. Games like that where it just comes off, and I think after the first quarter, Luca almost already had like a triple double. Um, I'm of the perspective that nights like that do happen in the NBA, and sometimes you just get absolutely run over. It's not something you like to see from a team, but considering the context of where we're at in our rebuild, we had just won two quick games against the Bucks, and then prior to that, the Trailblazers. That's right. Oh yeah, Denny's homecoming. That was fun. Yeah, no, those I think when you rip off two games like that, and there's this mindfulness of the tank and having to kind of stack losses instead of stacking wins to kind of protect your draft position, that kind of loss is met with some like, all right, you shrug it off and you accept it, but you do want to see more fight. You want those competitive tank losses that everybody's looking for.
Yeah.
That wasn't one of those,
Right.
unfortunately. I'm okay with getting punched in the mouth every once in a while. Just don't make it a trend.
Right.
Like if you're going to lose next game, you can't just be down by 10 or 15 in the first quarter. You got to just fight back and then do their more strategic lineup losses where you kind of like, oh, let's play Will Riley at the five, or let's feed a ton of minutes to Malachi Branham. Those are the things where you want to see them pull back instead of just like your starters getting beat down by really good players.
I feel like the Lakers game, to me, it's one of those moments where you realize, like, okay, you're still really far away, Like, although they've been doing a lot of good things this season, like they made a lot of progress. When it comes to Luca and LeBron, it's just like they almost looked like they were playing a different sport at certain times, Like it was just like the Wizards were completely lost because Luca just does, he just gets a step on you and that's it. You're done. Yeah, and then like LeBron throws lobs, he catches lobs, like it was just too much for them to handle, you know. And until the Wizards, maybe they will get a top three pick in this draft and they could land someone like Darryn Peterson, who we're going to get to soon. But,
Yeah.
until they get somebody that could be a top 5 to 10 player in the league, as good as Alex Sarr is, I don't think he's going to be top 10 in the league. I think he'll be one of the best bigs. But, until that happens, you kind of need that foundation in order to really reach that top level, and it's just one of those sobering reminders of that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like when I was watching that, it was kind of there was another Wizards Twitter's DeWitt Darius. He was on Troy Halliburton's pod with Damo recently, and he had said that he called this a bus driver draft because we need somebody to drive the bus, and we got a bunch of passengers. And it is one of those things where like, okay, yeah, that's something that we're missing. Like, maybe you can squint and down the line and you can maybe see some of our guys developing into something like that. I would think off top it would be Keyshawn or Trey, but they're just so much further away from like a bona fide, 1A lead your team type, like a Darryn Peterson type
Yeah.
of guy. Um, and yeah, that's what I think we're missing. But the good thing is if you find one of those guys with where we're at in our rebuild and it just kind of slots everybody down one more slot so their responsibilities a little lessened and the weight of what they have to carry. And yeah, we'll see how that all plays out. But yeah, definitely agree that we're still missing that top dog or that one piece that kind of cohesively brings everything together.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like, honestly, I think Darryn Peterson could have played in the NBA this season. Like he could have like maybe not been a star in the NBA, but he could have definitely been a good role player. And
Yeah.
I was thinking before, like it kind of makes me rethink the whole one and done rule. It's like, man, I don't know. Maybe they just need to start letting these kids come into the league because, like, like somebody like Keyshawn, like he'd probably be better than Darryn Peterson maybe in the NBA right now just because he's had more like work in the NBA at this point. But like, Darren, it wouldn't take him long to like reach a level where he just looks like the guy in the NBA. It's just the upside level. It's just like, like even though they're in college, it's just some of these kids you could just tell, it's just so obvious to anyone who watches them.
I mean, and even then, like the one and done rule is something that, like, you think back in like the 90s and early 2000s, the game was a lot more physical. So there's not even that physical development that really needs to take place for some of these kids. And I mean, then you look at a guy like Cam Boozer, he's already pretty physically developed as it is. Like
Exactly. Yeah.
there are, I see a Cooper Flag type. There are absolutely, prospects through every cycle where it's just like, hey, maybe you are good enough to skip college and just jump to the front of the line. I agree with that. There's obviously a lot of NCAA politicking that goes into that rules there and stuff. But I agree. Darryn Peterson is one of those guys that would jump to the front of the line, and I think you could make a case for AJ and Cam too. But yeah, DP's he's just pretty special.
Yeah. Well, speaking of DP and AJ, they're actually are still facing off. They're facing against each other right now as we record this. There's like 3.5 minutes left in the game. Looks like Kansas is gonna finish with the dub. They're 11 points ahead, but Darryn Peterson was just doing some preposterous things on that basketball court. Like just he's dunking over like three people at once, hitting threes contested, just doing whatever he wants. And it's like people compare this guy to Kobe for a reason, and it's just like, and it leads back to what you were saying about like Keyshawn and Trey Johnson. It's like those guys are really nice pieces, but there's levels to this, and it's like until you get those guys that do these ridiculous things like Luka with the Lakers, you're gonna have like a cap on your ceiling, and as much as the Wizards are doing, to make sure that they have the highest lottery odds possible, it is a shame that like, some of it is just left up to the basketball gods, right? Like Dylan Harper went to the Spurs. I was just seeing Troy saying on Twitter, like, hey, Dylan could have been really good on the Wizards. He'd been to have a lot more freedom to do more with the ball than he does in San Antonio. Because San Antonio is already a really good team, you know?
Yeah,
So it's
yeah,
just it's crazy how this lottery system works. Like, some of the best prospects will go to better teams, and that kind of caps their like ceiling in the meantime, just because like they don't get as many opportunities.
yeah. Well, and I mean, even that, and it kind of works both ways because, if we had been closer to our number two overall pick, there's a world where we walk out of there with Ace instead of Trey. But I guess, the Jazz were threatening to take Khan from the
Right.
Hornets. So there was all this other stuff behind the scenes. And ultimately, we wind up with Trey, which I'm stoked with. Trey was 3 on my board in that draft, and I'm really excited to see how he develops. But yeah, it really is ultimately just this big, like you can try and position yourself, even if you're a bad team or if you're tanking strategically, whatever it is. Ultimately, it's a game of chance at the end of the day. And a team like the Mavericks can just swoop in out of nowhere and just pluck Cooper Flag from much more wanting, needy teams. But yeah, I still feel like I'm really happy with kind of how our franchise has positioned ourselves now because we have so much flexibility and options. And not only that, it's such a deep draft. Thank God. If we do get some kind of bad lottery luck, I feel like we can still walk out of there with like a Kingston Flemings type guy. And just, I'll feel really, really good about that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think if the Wizards get the worst record, the fans can really have a peace of mind going into the offseason because, at that point you're guaranteed to get either Darryn Peterson, AJ Boozer, Caleb Wilson from UNC, or Kingston. Kingston is the one I've watched the least of. I still have to watch more of his tape and stuff, but I saw that he had like a 40-point game recently. He's been balling. So and that's something like that's going to be so interesting with you know the Wizards, how they balance like Trae Young with this stuff. Like, are they going to sign him to an extension after the draft, no matter who they draft, or is it kind of like because if they get someone like Kingston, it's like it might be a little awkward. So it's just like there's so much to contend with, but at the same time, they just have to assemble as much talent as they can because that's what they need. And then after that, you kind of figure it out from there.
Yeah, totally. I do think amassing talent is the name of the game, and that's why, like, even in the Wizards case, I've seen people try and make arguments for drafting for fit with wherever we fall, and I get it, especially with the fit of a guy like Cam Boozer on this team. But at the end of the day, I pretty much always go best player available as my draft mindset. And if you're at the top of the draft, you take a swing on the highest upside guy possible because you want a superstar and a franchise changer. And yeah, like I think we're in a great position that I think there's a lot of guys like that, or at least have the potential to be that kind of guy in this draft. So it's a good spot for us to be in for Wizards fandom. If you wanted to yearn for the days of yesteryear where we had Brad Beal and we're going for 35 win play-in seasons, this is not the team for you to watch.
Oh my God.
This is but hey, I mean, on the horizon, I'm. They said we're done with the deconstruction phase. Michael Winger came out and kind of put the stamp on that. So we are turning a corner, and I think next year, it depends on a lot of things and how it shakes out with the draft and free agency and everything. But I think we're in a really good spot in a weak East to kind of jump into the playoffs and just roll the dice and see like, hey, what do we have here, and where do we need to go from there? But yeah, there's so many ifs and stuff to play out till then.
I think the Wizards, part of their strategy with the timing of the rebuild was kind of going off of their scouting with like the draft classes, because I don't think next year's draft class is like all that amazing,
Mhm.
what I've seen. So it makes a lot of sense to say, okay, we're gonna go for it one more time with this one when class is amazing, and then we're gonna try to make the playoffs next year when the class isn't as good, So I think that was pretty sound decision making, because both this past year and 2020 or 2025 and 2026, right? Obviously last year was about Cooper Flag, and then Dylan was kind of like 1B, and then this year, you got three guys that could be superstars. And then you got guys like Caleb Wilson and Kingston who could be like stars, maybe not as good as those three, but still really good.
Yeah,
So, you're kind of just putting yourself in the best possible odds. But I think that I definitely think they can make the Eastern Conference play-in tournament next season. I mean, because honestly, if you don't, that would be ridiculous. I mean, if you have Trae Young and a really good prospect from 2026 and another year of development for Sar, Keyshawn, Trey. That's just for the East, like being so weak, there's just no excuse to not get at least the 10th seed. I think they should be at least eighth. But yeah,
agree. I mean, on paper, anyway, everything kind of looks like that's how it should go. So yeah,
yeah.
we'll see how there's so many different variables that can play in that. But I definitely agree. I think they've positioned themselves to kind of do that. And the thing I think back to is I can't remember if it was their introductory press conference. Or I can't even remember if it was something Presti or Dawkins said back in OKC, but they talked about when their return to the playoffs, they didn't want it to be something what they kind of just like, stumble into. They want to announce their return to the playoffs. And I think they can do that next year, whether or not they, have first round, second round success, or they're coming out of the play in, or they have a 6 seed spot or something like that. We'll see. But yeah, the weak East is such a big part of it. And then, what do we get out of Trae Young? What do we get out of our potential draft pick? Do we see continued growth from our young guys? But and then not for nothing, there's also the looming decisions on some of our guys who are going to have extensions. It'll be curious to see kind of what moves they make with Bilal and potentially Bub down the line. But yeah, as we have one of the worst records in the NBA, and I think this is one of the most exciting times to be a Wizards fan. It's kind of crazy.
It's pretty funny, right? And I've definitely appreciated, I think, how upfront the front office is about what you just said about how they're not going to be able to keep everybody and they have to make decisions. Um, I think someone like Bilal, they really want to make it work as long as he stays on the court. If anything, you could like kind of buy low on him, re-signing him now because like, his value might be a lot higher down the line than it is now if he works out. But it's kind of like what they did with like, Denny actually a little while when they re-signed him. Obviously they didn't get, at the same value they needed out of that trade in the end, but like just that act of signing him, that turned out to be one of the best contracts in the NBA. So I'm not saying Bilal would end up the same way, but it could be a similar idea, you know?
No, and honestly, I think I think there's reason to believe that's kind of the route they're going to take because if you look at how they handled Denny's extension and Corey Kispert's extension, both of those guys weren't players that they drafted. Um, and there's an argument that like, oh, they were signed to trade, which both of them were traded. Fair, but in Bilal's case, it really is kind of like he hasn't taken the offensive developmental leap that you want. The defense is as good as advertised. There's nobody who's going to question that on his end.
Yeah.
But we also have Jameer Watkins and Justin Champagnie kind of sitting in the wings on cheap team friendly contracts. And it's not that they can defend as well as Bilal can. It's that would you pay Bilal, 12, 14, 16 million dollars a year when you can get 85%, 90% of what he can do from them potentially? That's where the math kind of works in the front office's favor because you can do that cheaper extension. And if you do get the kind of, say he takes a shooting leap, even if it's from where he currently is to like 33, 34%, that's huge. That would be great for us. He also has never played with the point guard that's on Trae Young's level. So he's going to have somebody setting him up. Maybe that makes it easier for him to get, advantage creation or drives or just easier buckets for him in the half court. Cause that's really what he needs. But yeah, I think that kind of like 3 or 4 year deal where you're giving him sort of kind of like the mid-level exception, uh, in that like maybe 12, $14 million range. I think that's kind of where they're going to try and play it. And I don't know if Bilal is going to want to seek other options because I think we got a good thing going here. So like, I would think he'd want to stay on board. He's got his buddies on the team. It's really cool. Like I said, there's just so much flexibility in different ways they could go. You can use Bilal as a piece to trade to a contender to get a different veteran or some draft capital if you want. But I think the smart play is keeping him around because his defense is it's such a difference maker.
Yeah, I don't think it's in Bilal's best interest to just reject a smaller extension or something. I think he has to put together a fully healthy season before he starts doing that.
Yeah, that too.
So, and also you mentioned his defense. I mean, Jameer, honestly, he's getting close. His defense is pretty nuts. I talked to Sar after the Bucks game, and he's like, "Yeah, this guy's a pest. Like, he just makes life a lot harder on the other team." And it's like if Jameer, he's kind of similar to Bilal. Like if he developed offensively, it would be like, but it depends. I think Bilal is more like explosive and athletic than Jameer. Especially going to the rim, he's very strong. It's just like finishing, it doesn't always happen, but it's just the athleticism going in there is more than Jameer. But even just Jameer as like a defensive role player, like you saw him coming in at the end of the Trailblazers game, he sealed that win, and this is a second round rookie, and he's already doing that in crunch time. That's huge. So Jameer's another one where it's like this guy could be a long term piece, and he's somebody that was like a find in the second round. The second rounders 90% of the time don't do anything, so that's impressive.
Yeah. I mean, hey, we've got like what 40 second rounders left. So if we can do that with the rest of them, keep it going.
To be honest, they can't use it. They got to use those to like trade up or something like that.
Yeah. I've looked at that, and it's just too many picks for roster spots. So I mean, I know they're going to consolidate eventually, but like, yeah, that I'll be interested to see kind of how they use that because those do offer a lot of flexibility. But yeah, I would never complain about 40 Jameers either.
Yeah, well, staying on the Bucks game for a second, I want to just kind of get your thoughts on John Wall night in general. I mean, you're somebody who's been a fan for a long time. You lived through that era. You mentioned earlier, fans shouldn't wish for the yesteryear of Beal and everything. I think. Do you think this team can eventually produce an era on that level or better? And obviously John is kind of a part of the organization now. He's a part of the pregame and postgame broadcasting team. So, just what are your thoughts on kind of that whole deal? Also, what are your thoughts on an eventual jersey retirement? Like, do you see that coming anytime soon? Should it be next year? What are your thoughts on that?
So yeah, so the jersey retirement, I initially had said something like "no time like the present," Ted, because
Uh-huh.
they they did this kind of like head fake where it was just like, "Oh, guys, we've got something special brewing,"
Yeah.
and they like put stuff of John Wall, and everybody, Wizards fans are immediately like, "Jersey retired! Oh my God!"
Yeah.
They kind of walk it back. It'd be like, "It's actually just John Wall night and bobblehead," and like so. I I think I think that's going to be coming, and it seems like that's something that they're probably going to save for when the team is out of a rebuild, maybe when they do the Cap One renovations, maybe when there's, maybe we do have some playoff buzz or some juice going on and we can retire John Wall. And it's a big thing. And he gets the flowers that he deserves because eh, for me, it's a no brainer. I think he absolutely deserves to have his jersey retired. He's the only guy outside of Gill that kind of made the franchise relevant since what we last won our championship in 1978. So, I and he's just meant so much to the community. I have a ton of just personal love for John Wall because, like you said, that was my key era growing up when I was in high school and college. Like John was my guy, so I just have a lot of personal attachment to him. But even outside of my own bias, like it's really hard to, uh, put into words the level of impact that he had on not just Wizards fandom but the DC community at large. And when he says DC is his city, there are no lies told. That is his city. So yes, jersey retirement, all for it whenever it happens. I think they're kind of saving it for a better moment, which I'm fine with that. But not without saying shout out to Troy Halburn and Clinton Yates for calling out Ted for trying to kind of like real quick, pivot and be like, oh, John's always been our favorite guy because he was very unceremoniously kind of walked out the door, traded out the door, so to speak. But hey, if John can forgive it, if they can bury the hatchet, I'm willing to too. But for me, that was worth mentioning. To your first point about do I think in this era kind of have a John Wall moment or kind of reach the highs of that era? Um, I think I do. There's a lot that still needs to happen. It's very, very early, but I think the makings of something really good, or at least something the fans can be proud of or appreciate, is percolating right now. And a lot of thanks goes to Winger and Dawkins for being, smart enough to rip that Band-Aid off and realize like, hey, this is just kind of like rotted from the core. We really need to just do a whole organizational facelift. And they have. And, it's not a pretty process and there's stuff that happens and you get screwed in the draft and, you make trades and you don't think they work out the way that they're supposed to. But all of that has happened and we're still in such a great spot with so much potential for, young player development between Sar, Key, Trey, Jamir, Will Riley's, I think, an interesting piece still. The incoming pick, we got Trey Young, a four-time All-Star, 25-10 guy. Like there's a lot of really good, but like Sar alone is just kind of this diamond in the rough that I really don't think, you know, it's hit a lot of Wizards fans, like how good he can be because, he's not, it's the same thing I said with Trey and Keith. None of these guys are playing with a point guard.
Yeah.
Like, and that's going to make such a huge difference to have a table setter because we aren't great in all these defensive metrics, but we have so many dogs on defense that I think once you have that engine put in the car, it takes us from a Civic to a Ferrari. And I'm excited. Like we could faceplant and everything could blow up, but like I think the infrastructure that they have in place is really, really sound. Um, so I'm excited. So yeah, I do think we can have the highs of that period were one game away from the Eastern Conference. So I I think I think Sar, I think Keyshawn, I think Trey, I think those kinds of guys could take us back there. So yeah, let me stamp that. Let's say that they'll return us to the glory of the John Wall era, just a different iteration.
Yeah, well, I honestly, I think the goal should be to surpass it, right? I mean, they didn't make the conference finals, so so
True. Aim
I
high.
mean, it's amazing this franchise hasn't made a conference finals since like 50 years, or I mean, or what was it, 1979 or
Yeah, it has to be the last time we went to the finals. So
yeah, well, yeah, it's crazy. Obviously John got super close, not quite. I think I agree with what you said. Like if John sort of is like putting what happened behind him with like the trade and was kind of run out of town when he got hurt and everything. Stuff happens. Obviously, I think he's talked about it where it was like, like some of it was my fault, but whatever, like I didn't appreciate it, but now he's come to terms. I think yeah, at some point you gotta like move on, right? It's like you can't just be mad forever. So I think it's good that the both sides are like embracing each other again. So I think the relationship is there, and that's the key. I think he's just got so much love for the city that he didn't want to like leave it behind over that. So I think it's something really poetic. I think they still haven't dropped this full video yet, but John had an interview with Trey Young and Trey Johnson and Bub
yeah,
and Chris Miller from Monumental. So that's really poetic. It's kind of ushering in the new era of the team. I think that like what you said about Sar, it's amazing his progression, just his perception from his first summer league game until now.
yeah.
Eh,
We all remember 0 for 15.
Yeah, over 15, it's just the most funny thing to me. Like, obviously it was a bad game, but it was just like over the summer. It's just like, dude, it just became this whole thing. And
Yeah,
now he's like already like one of the, better bigs in the NBA. And like you said, now he's gonna just now start with the point guard whenever Trey comes onto the floor. Like, I think them playing with a point guard is gonna do wonders. Because honestly, it's tough sometimes watching them trying to get an open shot without any point there, and it's like they have to just try so hard just to do basic things. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's tough. Like Trey's the type of guy that will set the table for everybody, and he can create his own looks too. And we just, outside of like we had CJ doing that, but once CJ got traded, those first couple games, man, those were rough to watch because it was just like, God, we really, really do miss having a table setter. And, I appreciate that they're trying to get Bub to kind of take some of those duties, but I just don't think that's his game and he's equipped to do it. Um, you need a guy that can get to the rim. You need a guy that can collapse defenses. You need a guy that can make passes and read them and anticipate where the next read is and who you need to get the ball to. And we just don't have that guy right now. So you're forcing, you know, in a weird way, it helps like guys like Keyshawn and Trey because they have to kind of develop that part of the game a little bit better. And Keyshawn especially has grown so much, I think, in that from where he was in college to where he is currently. And I think Trey Johnson has a lot of untapped playmaking potential too, but they got to take their lumps and they're going to be going against you know, they're the top guy on the scouting report right now.
Yeah.
So, you got to learn through that. So they'll be all the better for it. But yeah, it can be tough to watch at times. And that's where I get like people were saying, we really need to address point guard because it'll hurt guys' development. Well, we addressed it. So we'll see.
Yeah, and it was something that I kind of like predicted before. I didn't think it would like come with the Trey Young trade. I just kind of figured like they have to address this position just because like the kids need it.
Yeah.
So I'm glad they did. Obviously, it's kind of like head start on next season, so that's all good. But definitely like they'll definitely get like a test drive this season, like 5 to 10 games, however many Young plays. So that's gonna be fascinating to watch how he mixes in with those guys.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to that, honestly, because like depending on where they are in their schedule, like we talk about the tank and stuff and how they can angle. Like I really want to see them go for it one game. I want them to pick out one where it's a good matchup and somebody needs to win or something for playoff seeding. And I really want to see what they can do. I think Dawkins does too, and I think we'll get a couple of those. Record be damned. So yeah, let's see what happens. But I don't know when we'll see them. Like it'll probably be in the last 10, 15 games of the season. Don't expect to see them anytime soon.
Yeah. Yeah, no, well, I mean, overall, it's good to hear that you feel good about the state of the rebuild. I think that, Wizards fans have been through a lot. It's hard. It's not always easy for the fan base to stay positive. It's somebody who like writes about the team. I feel that all the time. It's just like fans are just so jaded about everything. So it's cool. It's just cool to see that positivity, and you see some of the national media starting to come around. Like Udonis Haslam was like, sorry, we're sorry. Like, you're good, man. Like, keep going. So that's been really cool.
Yeah, no, that's a big one. You don't see much, you don't see many people apologizing to the Wizards. We'll keep that trend going.
Yeah. Well, overall, I think that's a good place to cap things. Well, tell the people where they can find you on social media to see your musings.
Yeah, if you're a Wizards fan, I am on Twitter or X, formerly known as Twitter,
Yeah.
under Dub Clayton. Follow me there. I always love talking Wizards and will entertain just about any sort of random conversation about them. So yeah, and shout out Wiz Twitter as well. Like I've been on Reddit, I've been on a bunch of different message boards and everything. Wizards Twitter really is my favorite community for Wizards chat because I love y'all. Some of y'all are weirdos, but we're all the same, like weirdos that love the Wizards. So just a great community out there. And if you're a Wiz fan and you're looking for that, I'll just plug that much. There's tons of great people out there.
All right. Well, until next time, guys. Thanks, everybody.